Alright, hey guys, welcome back. It's Gene. Thought I would jump into X-Plane 11 here in the Carenado PC-12 with Reality Expansion Pack and compare the Reality Expansion Pack pre-flight inspection checklist on the walk-around with just how we do it in real life and see how accurate it is. And disclaimer again, I am not really much of a flight sim pilot. I don't use X-Plane, so I apologize if I don't really know my way around the sim too well here. Just bear with me, and we'll see if we can figure this out together here. So I think if I go over here and click Walk Around, we are now outside the airplane. So let's look at the checklist here and just compare this to how I would actually do the walk around on the real airplane, see what we get. So, first of all, I wouldn't start here. I would start just outside of the passenger door at the leading edge of the left wing, but that's okay. We'll start back here at the cargo door. So, let's see, luggage checked and secured. Nope, we would do that inside the airplane. Cargo check, that really means the same thing. And again, that would be done inside the airplane, so that is not realistic. Tie-down straps, check. Nope, that would be on the tail and under the wings. So far, we're 0 for 3 here, guys. Cargo door, check. There we go. We would do that here. Check lower attachment lugs for condition. That is true for sure. So I would actually open up the cargo door. And to open up the cargo door, you press in on this button right here, and then you press this forward. That's spring-loaded, and it presses into the airplane, and then you would pull out on this lever to open up the door. And there's actually a handle down here on the lower side of the door that you can pull on to tug that door open, and then there's a hydraulic arm that'll lift it up and open it all the way. And then when you do that, I don't think there's a way to open this. Let's see, there's a click spot right here. Ooh, something's happening inside the airplane there. Okay, looks like we can reach through the window and put the shade up and down. I don't think there's any way to open this door. Anyway, with the door open, I would actually check the lugs. There are a series of lugs down here on the bottom that the chute bolts on the door actually go into to lock and secure the door, so I would check those for condition to make sure those looked good. And then also, if you're flying a legacy PC-12 with hydraulic gear or an NG with hydraulic gear, most of the NGs have electrical gear, but you would actually have, with the door open on the door jamb, a little sight gauge down here for nitrogen and hydraulic fluid. So you would look in a little sight gauge and you could see red hydraulic fluid in there. And then the nitrogen gauge has a little approved range that's shaded on it based on the temperature, with a small table next to it right there by the gauge on the door jamb, and you would check to make sure that you had enough nitrogen in the bottle for the current temperature. And you want to make sure that you have that because the nitrogen system is there to keep the gear pressurized at altitude. So the PC-12 landing gear does not have any uplocks. When we climb up in altitude, the gear is just held up by hydraulic pressure. You're going to lose a little bit of hydraulic pressure, and if you take off with not enough nitrogen, the gear is actually going to sag out of the wells a little bit in flight, and you don't want that to happen because it's going to give you a lot of extra drag. And if you're just a little bit low on nitrogen and you take off and you're flying along in the cruise, you might actually see every now and then the red gear in transit lights will flash because the gear is just kind of barely sagging enough to break the micro switch connection and give you a little flash of those red lights. I've seen that happen, if you're kind of on the lower end of the approved range for the nitrogen, you can see that a little bit. But anyway, so yeah, I would check those things, and I would close the door. You close the door by pressing this button right here. You press and hold, and that will engage a motor that actually will bring the door down to within a few inches of being closed, and then you press in on the door and then actually lock it with this handle. There is actually a throwdown rope in the door on the inside as you're opening the door. If it's windy, you want to throw that so that strap is dangling down to where you can reach it, because if it's very windy and the wind is hitting the door just right when it's open, when you press this button, the motor won't be strong enough to overpower the wind to close the door, so you actually have to reach up and grab that strap and pull the door closed manually. Again, only if it's windy do you really need to worry about that, but it is there. So let's see, cargo door closed and locked. Yep, and then it looks like it's not modeled here, but these 5 windows are there to show us the position of the chute bolts. So these have little green strips that will be shown if the chute bolts are engaged, and you want to make sure those are all green before you walk away to make sure the door is closed properly. So this checklist here is pretty disappointing. Let's keep on going though. Maybe it'll get better. Empennage, static ports, yep, check clear of obstructions. We got a static port right there that we do want to check. External power door closed, so that's right down in here, and we would want to make sure that was closed. Let's see, and then if you have the larger capacity auction system, you would check the rupture disc on this side to make sure that it's not red. Now, missing from this checklist is the Hellhole. The Hellhole is down on the lower fuselage. There's a door that you can open up. There are 4 pins that you open, and that door will swing down on a hinge, and you can actually stand up all the way into the tail. You can poke your head up in there, and you can look around. You really only need to look in the Hellhole on the first flight of the day, but you want to look in there to make sure both batteries are connected. The ELT is in there. You've got circuit breakers you want to check. You have control cables, rudder cables. You've got autopilot cables. There's a net that protects the aft bulkhead from damage. And also a steering bar. And also the VCCS is in there. So quite a few things that you want to look at up in the Hellhole for the first flight of the day. So that's not on here at all. So yeah, I would look up in there, close that door up. I think on the manufacturer checklist they do want you to check the dorsal and ventral fins. I don't see that on here, but I would glance at this to make sure it's just general condition. It's fine. I think that's it for there. Empennage, rudder and trim tab, check visually. Yep, you want to look at the rudder and the trim tab, vertical stab. We're going to look at this for general condition, and the elevator assembly. Nope, I would not say that that's accurate. You want to first of all look at the horizontal stabilizer to make sure that the boot there on the leading edge of the horizontal stabilizer is in good condition, no tears in the boot. And then I would also look at my glide slope antenna on this side too. And then a big thing that's missing I see here in the sim is on the real airplane you actually have a little green arc that's painted right there at the leading edge of the horizontal stabilizer, because on the PC-12 the horizontal stab is trimmable. You don't have an elevator trim tab. When you're applying pitch trim in the cockpit, you're actually trimming the entire stabilizer up and down. And so you want to make sure that the stabilizer is showing in the green range in the arc that's actually painted up there on the tail, and that'll correspond to the takeoff setting position on the indicator in the cockpit. So you want to make sure that those match, and I don't see anything about that on here. So that's kind of a big one that's missing. Go around to the other side here. They, excuse me, they are missing static wicks, which again is a big deal. So unless they're on this next one, yeah, static discharge wicks. So I would actually be checking for those on this side too. There should be 2 static wicks. Yeah, right here on the outboard sections of the elevator. There are 2 on each side. There's 1 on the stinger and 2 on the rudder, on the top and the bottom there. And those are actually pretty important to be there because as the airplane flies through the air, it's generating static electricity. And if those static wicks aren't in place, the static electricity will actually interfere with the communications radios. So you can actually start to get some static on your radios. Could interfere with the reception of a navigate on the ground. So those are actually no-fly items if too many of those are missing, and those are on the MEL. So those are definitely big deals to check to make sure those are there. A fun fact about this one on the bottom right here, this static wick is the only static wick on the PC-12 that's actually flexible. The rest of them are rigid. And it's flexible because this is right at eye level as you're walking around the airplane, and people have poked their eye on that. So they made this one a little bit more flexible so it doesn't put your eye out if you accidentally walk into it. All right, back to the checklist. Horizontal stabilizer. So we're going to look at that. So they have it on this side, but not on the other. Again, checking the condition of the boot, the elevator. Yep, de-icing boots check visually. Static wicks, we're going to check those. There you go, dorsal and ventral fairings we're going to check. And general condition check. Yeah, pretty happy with that. I would also look at the rudder cables on the lower end of the rudder. You can actually see slightly into the tail and check the cables for condition. And then we just completely skipped over the aft fuselage on the right side. So that's no bueno. So if we were to turn to the left right now, there's another static port that I would need to check, and then also the VCCS exhaust that I would want to check to make sure that was clear. And then coming up here, flaps, check condition. Let's see what this does. Okay, it just bumps the flap a little bit. You don't really want to, no need to do that to the flap. Be nice to the flap, so the flap will be nice to you. But I would definitely walk along the flap here and check the general condition. And actually, I'm sure they're probably going to have us check the gear on the leading edge of the wing. It's actually easier to access the gear from the trailing edge of the wing, so I would normally check the gear back here, but maybe we'll come around to that on the leading edge. All right, so working our way down here. Here's the aileron. So again, checking the aileron for general condition, and also the aileron trim tab here. So they have check condition, static discharge wicks, check. Yep, we want to do that for sure. There should be a couple of them down here. And general condition check. That's all pretty good, although I would also look at the pitot tube here, at the drain hole on the back, and to make sure the drain hole was nice and clear. And I don't know if they have anything. I'm going to fast forward for just a second. Okay. Yeah, so they're missing fuel vents as well. So there are a couple of fuel vents on the lower surface of the wings that we need to check to make sure those are clear as well. And those are very important. If those are blocked, we could actually starve the engine of fuel. Okay, so we, again, would not want to move the ailerons on the rail airplane. So that is not realistic. All right, coming down to the wingtip. Nav and strobe light check. So you can see the nav light. The strobe light would actually be up here on the top. So if there's a way to pan around, I don't know how to do it, but can't actually see the strobe light from this view, but we can check the nav light. And I would also check the radome right here. So the weather radar is in this dome. It's just a little antenna that goes back and forth, but we're going to actually look at the dome to make sure that it's in good condition. And there is a little drain hole on the bottom of this that you want to make sure is A, in the right position, and B, clear and open. And when they do maintenance on the antenna, if they reinstall this backward, which I have actually heard of that happening, the drain hole will be on the top, and the drain hole becomes a rain hole. And if you fly through any rain, you're just filling up the radome with rainwater, and it doesn't have any way to get out, and that's a good way to ruin your weather radar. Okay, so let's see. Right wing leading edge, fuel tank vent. Oh, okay, well, yeah, it's vented on the top, but we also want to check vents on the bottom, so at least they made an effort there. Fuel quantity and filler cap check secure. We do want to check to make sure that's secure. That's good. And quantity, we don't really look in the tanks for quantity like a smaller airplane. You can sump the tanks if you want to check the color and for contamination, but there's no way of doing that from just looking in the through the cap there. So far, pretty disappointing here. Right wing leading edge. Pitot probe, check, or cover removed, and checked. So, yeah, that's true. We want to make sure that ram inlet on the leading edge of the pitot probe is open. The drain hole's clear on the back, like I mentioned. De-icing boot on the leading edge of the wing. We're going to make sure that doesn't have any tears. It's in good condition. And probe temperature. Okay, so you can take the cover off, and then I guess they want you to turn the pitot probe heat on from the cockpit and come out here to make sure it's warming up. Not something we normally do. All right, right wing leading edge, main landing gear check, brake assembly check, wheel chocks removed. Unless we're going to do more. Good Lord, that is lacking for sure in detail. All right, so what we're really going to check on the landing gear is, first of all, the tire inflation. 60 psi. Now, we really just kind of look at it visually to make sure that we have you can tell by looking at the tire usually if the inflation is pretty close to being correct. It'll sag just a little bit on the PC-12. And then we're also going to look at the tread, make sure that we don't have any bald spots on the tire. If you do have, some spots on the tire that the tread is worn down, you want to make sure that the safety cord isn't exposed, which is the Kevlar mesh underneath the rubber on the tire itself. The brake assembly we want to check, so we want to make sure that the parking brake is set. We want the brake system pressurized for the walkaround on the PC-12 so that we can look at the brake wear indicator pins. And those, you can't really see them on here, at least not from this side, and I don't really see them modeled over here on this side. But there's a pin that sticks out of the assembly, and if that pin is sticking out, it's not flush with the assembly, then you've got plenty of brake pad left. When that brake pad wears down, that pin comes in, and when it becomes flush with the assembly, that means it's time to get a brake job because your brake pads are wearing thin. So yeah, we would check that, and then also for any red hydraulic fluid leaking out of the brake lines. We would check the landing gear struts. These are oleo struts, hydraulic struts, so we would check to make sure that those were pressurized and they weren't leaking any oil. I would look up into the gear well itself to make sure that there weren't any obstructions in the gear well that were going to prevent the landing gear from coming up into that. And yeah, just checking connections, and also the landing light. So the landing light you can actually see right there. We check that for general condition. And yeah, we would make sure that the chocks are removed, but normally those are going to be on the nose gear. So all right, nose section right. Cowling right hand, check and secure. Oh lordy, guys, this is I'm gonna have to give this checklist an F minus. We're missing a lot of stuff here. So let me backtrack a little bit back here. You got 2 access doors. You would, for the first flight of the day, want to glance in there to check your, if you have the smaller oxygen bottle, you would check in there to check your oxygen pressure in your bottle. You would have a rupture disc or a blowout disc on this side that you would check to make sure it was green so that you didn't see a rupture in the oxygen system. And then you would also want to open up and make sure that your ECS looks good in terms of the connections for that, the outflow valve, all that looks normal. And then you would open up the cowling, not just make sure that it's closed, and you would want to look in here at the engine compartment, everything that you can see on this side, just checking for hoses, connections, general condition of things, leaks. You're just glancing in there at a bunch of different stuff. And then we also have these NACA ducts. A couple of these are actually for the engine mounts, and we want to make sure these NACA ducts are open. A series of these around the cowling. And then I'm not sure if they're going to have us look at the nose gear. Yeah, okay, good. So we'll get to that in a second. I would do that on this side personally, but so long as we get to it somewhere here, that's fine. And then we'd also look up at the windshield to make sure that it was clean enough for flight and just checking the general condition of that. Checking the exhaust stack here to make sure that that's open. Coming around, I would look down here at my inertial separator door to make sure that that was open and it was clear of any obstructions. Also, you can see the oil cooler to make sure that that filter is looking good. And then I would come around to the prop. And let's see what they have. So they have nose section, blades check. So we got a 4-blade prop here. So yep, we would check the blades. So what you're checking on the blades is a whole bunch of stuff. First of all, I would check the boot. So these boots, I would check to make sure they're not delaminating. That they look good. They don't have any damage. Another fun fact for you guys about the boots, the reason they only extend out about 1/3 of the way on the blades is because the outer section of the propeller blade actually is traveling at a faster speed because it has a bigger circumference than the inner sections of the blade. So as the faster the blade travels, the more friction it generates, the more heat it generates, so that the blade stays warm enough in the outboard section that it doesn't need a boot. So you really only need to worry about icing in the root of the propeller blades. So anyway, checking the boots, and then I would check the entire leading edge for nicks or damage. Anything that you can kind of get your fingernail caught in to where it's not easy to get it out is really too big to fly. And then I would also check the trailing edge for any nicks. Normally the damage is on the leading edge. And then I would also check for what we call blade shake and angular play. So I would grab each blade and I would actually check to make sure that it feels nice and secure. It doesn't shake either axis, the X or the Y axis, if that makes sense. It shouldn't spin. It should be nice and tight in there. If it's loose at all, if there's any play in that, it could indicate that you have an issue with your governor. And then I also want to check for any oil leaks coming out of the hub or the spinner that could indicate that we have a leak in the governor system as well. So the PT6 is a free turbine engine, and with a free turbine engine, you can just spin this. The propeller is literally not connected to the engine. So you can just spin this around. You're not going to damage anything, and it's really easy to turn, and you can just spin it around to look at all 4 blades. You just stay standing in one spot and bring the blade to you. Let's see. So blades check. Yep. De-icing boots. We would check that. Spinner. Yep. I would check the spinner for general condition, air inlet, and exhaust covers. Oh, there you go. Okay. So the exhaust covers removed and stowed. Again, looking in both stacks to make sure you don't have any bird's nests or anything in there, any obstructions in there. Air inlets, check for obstructions. For sure, we would want to look in the mouth. This is the air inlet to make sure that that's nice and clear. Exhaust system check. Yep. Let's see. Really nothing else right here. Again, looking at the NACA ducts. And then we'll come around to the other side, check the nose gear. So first of all, the taxi light I would check for general condition. And let's see what they have. Wheel chocks removed, sure. If the parking brake is set, which it should be. Nose gear and doors check. So again, not nearly specific enough, but again, we're going to check the same stuff. So checking the tire for inflation, wear, so the tread looks good. The oleo nose strut right here needs to be extended enough. This is kind of like, you wouldn't really want to see it much more compressed than that. Otherwise you start worrying about prop clearance. And then on the back side of this strut, there's actually a shear plate, and that shear plate is there to show you that the turn limits have not been exceeded when the airplane was being towed. So on the back of this, I don't think we can see it here, but there's just a little plate that's wired on, and the nose gear has a travel limit. So when they're towing the airplane around and they're going to put it in the hangar, get it out of the hangar, they have to watch these turn limits, and it's 60 degrees of range, and if they exceed that, they'll break that shear plate off, and you would not want to fly the airplane until it got an inspection. So you want to make sure the shear plate is there, it hasn't been damaged. And then I would look up in the gear well to make sure that, again, it was clear of any obstructions. I would look at the gear harness in there. When the nose gear retracts, it comes aft into the well, and it catches a harness that actually will close those gear doors up behind it, which is kind of cool. All right, left side of the cowling, oil quantity check. Yep, that is true. So I would open up the cowling here. There's a sight gauge inside. We don't have to pull a dipstick out or anything. There's just a sight gauge that will show you if you have enough oil. You ideally want to check that when the engine's warm, within 5 minutes after shutdown. But normally you've got enough oil in the engine that even with the engine being cold, you can look in the sight gauge and see that you have enough oil in the engine. And then I would also make sure the dipstick was secured, because there's a sensor on that. And then I would check the exciter box on this side. You can see the accessory gearbox. You can see the starter generator. You can see all kinds of stuff in there. You're checking for general condition and connections. Again, checking this stack. I already mentioned that for any obstructions. Checking the NACA ducts. Let's see, nothing else there. Windshield on this side. Yeah, general condition and oil quantity, they got that. Left section of the nose, left-hand cowling, check secure. Yep, we're going to close that up. There you go, windshield, check clean. Nice, they got that. Okay, again, we missed a couple of things here. Definitely one thing that's a pretty big deal that you want to check down here. It's just off screen. There's an access door. You would open that door up. There are actually two doors down there, just like on the other side, and one of them is more important than the other. I would look in both for at least the first flight of the day, but one of them has the fuel bypass in there, and it's a little valve. It's the fuel bypass's valve will pop out if you're using the bypass, which means that your fuel filter is clogged. And if your fuel filter is clogged, that little pin will pop out and show you that you wouldn't want to fly because the fuel is not being filtered. It's bypassing the fuel filter because the filter is clogged. And while the engine will run, you certainly don't want to run it for very long without a filter. So that would be a no-fly situation if you saw that pin popped out. And then the other door will show you the rudder and aileron interconnect. Just, again, checking for general condition. This is your ice inspection light. Take a look at that. Here's the left wing leading edge with the main landing gear, brake assembly, and chocks. Checking this for all the same stuff that we checked on the other side. And de-icing boot, yep, again, I'm going to check for all the same things. Let's see what they got. Pitot probe, yep, cover removed and checked. Yeah, this is interesting. These probes aren't really right. So first of all, you do have an AOA vane here, and you've got one on each side. So you would want to check those on each side. And this has a little tab on it that moves, and it should move very freely and easily. Like the test is if you could just set a penny on it, if it were deflected up, just the weight of the penny should make it move down. So it has to be very nice and loose. And this little fin will just align with the relative wind, and it will show you your angle of attack. So we're checking to make sure that those are nice and free. Let's see, what else do we got? Yep, fuel tank, the cap, and the vent. And again, they're asking you to check the color and the quantity. That's not really something we would do here. Left wing leading edge nav and strobe light check condition. Again, the strobe light should be up here. General condition check. Let's see, checking for dents or damage on the entire leading edge of the wing, the boot. And they're not really giving you either recog, either I see. So we checked the landing lights and the taxi light, but you've got recog lights, which are recognition lights, and these little flap canoes here on each side. So we want to take a look at those to make sure those are in good condition. And let's see, what else do we got? Static wicks, aileron, and trim tab. Yeah, there's not a trim tab on this side, just the aileron. There's the strobe up there. Static wicks on this side. That's all good stuff. Flaps, general condition. Check, yep. Yeah, check condition again. We don't really need to be tugging on those. Just kind of looking at them is fine. Okay, we're going to go in the cabin here. So normally the inside stuff is done first, but we'll see what it says in here. Main entry door closed and locked, so I definitely would not be doing any type of pre-flight inspection with passengers loaded, so that doesn't make any sense. I would have this done well before I'd be closing the door, but let's see, hand luggage secured and stowed, passenger seats check, passenger seat belts, yeah. So we go through the cabin. Again, we normally do that first to make sure all the oxygen masks are in place, to make sure that the emergency exit here is free and clear. Placard is in place. We lay the belts over to make them look nice. Make sure all the seats are in the upright position. The tray tables are stowed. Picking up any trash, making it look pretty, making sure that the drawers are stocked with snacks and drinks and stuff. And then they're going to take us into the cockpit. So, again, I would have done this first and just done a receiving flow on the airplane. So I think I'm going to end it there. Overall, unfortunately, I've got to give it an F-. That checklist was definitely very much lacking in detail. But I hope you guys learned something. And let me know if you guys have any questions, anything you'd like me to go over for the PC-12, any other video ideas you got for me are always welcome. Let me know in the comments, and please subscribe if you're liking this stuff. I hope everybody's doing well, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.